Hello, I'm Sudarshana Starshine Star. How are all of you? I hope you're doing very, very well indeed. Even with all the rocking and rolling and challenges on the earth realm, no matter where you are, I hope that you're finding your balance as best you can for you and your beloveds and that you're doing pretty thumbs up well. I begin all of my clips with the three opening prayers, which are short and they're in Sanskrit and Telugu. And I do this to bless and uplift, purify and protect you, me, and this clip. They are the Guru Mantra, the Ganesha Mantra, and the Gayatri Mantra. But before I do that, I'm going to command on the sacred blood of Jesus Christ to wash over you, me, and all of our beloveds, and this clip and this social media, to bless and to purify and sanctify and just to wash away any and all negativity or projected negativity. I'm asking for the blessings for the best and the highest. And I thank you, Yeshua. I thank you, Jesus the Christ. I also call on Mother Mary to send her beautiful presence to be here with us in this moment in time, even though we know that the divine is always with us. So thank you, Yeshua. Thank you, Mother Mary. And now for the prayers. Om, Om, Om. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Parabrahmam, Tasmahi Sri Guruve Namaha. Om Suklam Bharataram Vishnum Sashivarnam Chatobhujam Prasanavaranam Dhyaye Sarva Vignopashante. Om Bhur Bhuva Suvaha Tat Savitur Varenyam Bhago Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Naha Prachodayat. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Excellent. Well, today is a beautiful Wednesday. It's July 23rd, 2025. I have a YouTube channel called It's the Dazzling of the Light, or just go to YouTube and type at Sudarshana Starshine Star. I have over 250 very interesting and cool and juicy clips there. Why not join? It's free. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And why not hit the notification bell, because you don't want to miss out. I've got a juicy one today here for you guys. I had prepared it a couple of days ago, but I just didn't feel to record it and publish it yet, even though Epstein is on everyone's lips right now. A couple days ago when I was preparing this, which is from testimony from Sean Atwood's channel on YouTube, and while I do really like Sean Atwood, I really don't agree with his point of views on a lot of things or things like that on his YouTube channel. So I like to be clear about that. When I am referencing someone or posting something, it's because I agree with it and I'm in alignment with it. But I'm not saying that I'm in alignment with everything Sean Atwood puts out or what he says on his interviews or whatever. I think he's a good guy. I think he means well, but some things that he says are just, I'm just going to say too bluntly, I do not agree. So that's just the way that is. But this was an interview that he did a couple of days ago. I think it was on the 21st. And he labeled it, Epstein's Niece Exposes All from Bill Clinton to Cult of Baal, exclusive with Anya Wick. And he called it podcast 771. So while I was, I watched it first and then I was like, yeah, I want to do something with this. So then I took some big chunks of it that I'm going to share with you guys, and then I will interject when I feel to interject. But when I was doing this, I have to tell you, a couple days ago, it took me a long time because I kept going off in a reverie, because when you listen to someone like Anya Wick give her testimony and her story about she was raised in a, satanic dark cult family and what happened to her. And I've shared, if you go on my YouTube channel, I don't do playlists. You'll just have to scroll. There's especially one clip that I called My Stepfather, the Most Famous Shaman on Earth. And I talk about him and give more details, even though I sprinkle a few. I've only started talking really at the end of last year about this. I pretty much kept it under hat for very, very long time, decades. But Satanists and Luciferians are not the same. There is a difference. However, I'm not going to dilute by going again and sharing things about my personal experience, but I just will say to the point, I have experienced and had a foot in both worlds. That's the way God wanted it. Since I was a small child, I was born into a very privileged, upper middle class family. I had a very privileged life on that aspect, even though since the time I was born, there was a lot of abuse going on that continued on throughout my whole life. And as well, that's my biological family. And then my mother, when I was, I call myself a girl because I was a girl. That doesn't mean I was a child. But when my mother married the most famous shaman on the earth called Don Miguel Ruiz, and as I tell people, Don, D-O-N, is not his first name. His first name is Miguel Angel, or that translates to Michael, an angel. And yeah, that's one of the things he often told people close to him, not a lot of people, that he was an incarnation of Michael the Archangel, which is a total lie. He is a type of an angel because I've seen it, but he's a fallen angel. Anyway, he's very well known. He's the most famous shaman, and 2 out of 3 of my stepbrothers are as well, but they're actually Luciferian. So they claim to be Toltecs. They claim to be teaching what's called Nahualism, Nagualism. They just talk about their family roots and lineage out of Guadalajara and out of Pueblo, Mexico, and their grandfathers, great-grandfathers, great-great-grandfathers, great-great-grandfathers. But I'm here to say it's all the Brotherhood of the Serpent. It's all the bloodlines of the fallen dragon, the fallen angel. And Miguel, he doesn't now, and this is a long story. I didn't mean to divert this here, but my Swami, Sri Kaleshwar Swami of his ashram is called Penukonda Ashram in Andhra Pradesh state in southern India, whom I was with for 15 years. He's not on the earth anymore. He took his Mahasamadhi several years ago, but he's still very much with me. So very, very much around. And he stripped Miguel of what are called in India, his miracle powers are called siddhis, because Miguel had a lot of miracle powers, and my Swami stripped him of those. And Miguel tells big lies, like one day he just decided to give up his powers. But he didn't. They were taken from him from all of his grievous, you could say, I want to call them crimes against humanity because it involves soul stealing and things like that. But it's not the same kind of crimes against humanity that you'll hear if you listen to my YouTube channel when I talk about the pedos and the pedovores and things like that. It's not on that level. But it is on a sex cult level, and it is on a soul stealing level, and it is on a black magic level. So, okay. Why I'm saying this is I was going into reveries. It took me so long to get this information down from Anya Wick, Jeffrey Epstein's niece, because in some ways, I mean, it kept, I don't like to use the word triggering because I don't really get triggered by it, but it kept opening it up doors of memories. And, when you go down memory lane in certain timelines, it's like you're really there. So I was having all these different memories and things, and I'm not saying it was a pleasant experience, which is why, like Anya Wick says, we have to talk about these things. We have to air this truth out. Like I said, the Four Agreements, one of my stepfather's most famous books, all over the world, translated into Epstein languages. And every time I think I don't need to talk about it anymore, I always meet people that don't know anything about me. We just start talking, and when I tell them I'm a soul healer or a spiritual teacher, and then so many times they invariably say, oh, you know what my favorite spiritual book is? And then they tell me something, and I oftentimes say, wait, stop. Are you going to say something like The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz? And 10 times out of 10, they go, yes, how did you know that? Or they name another book. So it shows me, life is showing me again and again that I have to keep speaking up about this. I have to keep speaking up about this. All right. So let me go to this information today, which I said was on Sean Atwood's YouTube channel. Epstein's niece exposes all from Bill Clinton to cult of ball, exclusive with Anya Wick. And here's Anya Wick speaking. I am Jeff Epstein's niece. Bill was on the flight logs because he went to the island. He also went to many, many other orgies where me and other children were present. With my experiences, I believe he wanted to talk about the other parties involved, and I know he didn't unalive himself. I'm not sure whether they let him go and get plastic surgery and flee the country, or if they did unalive him, but I do believe he was a pawn and that his story blew up in the media to keep people from looking beyond him. If Jeffrey was the one villain in charge of this, then, oh, he's unalived and it's all over. Everything's good now. MK Ultra is the practice of creating slaves with a severed memory, many of whom were my siblings, who I only got to see at family reunions and ORGIES, whom I would rush home from school to watch on TV. I moved back to New York City because my ex-husband had a scheme to try to allow me to speak out about some of this in court. Now, I want to interrupt here only to say, Anya Wick, she's talking from the inside of her experience, but she has been since she was an infant, ritually, satanically abused and dosed with drugs, LSD, and other things, and her mind was split. So she doesn't have, and she even says, I mean, she didn't research, she doesn't look into other things. She is not correct when she's trying to cast a sympathetic light on Jeffrey Epstein. Yeah, I do agree that he's a pawn. He was never the boss. He's a pawn of the higher satanic elites or ruling elites, definitely connected to the royals, definitely, from that connected to the three-letter agencies, whether it's, CIA, FBI, Mossad, MI6, MI5, like that, most definitely, just like his girlfriend Ghislaine Maxwell, who was Robert Maxwell's daughter, Sir Robert, he has a knighthood, Sir Robert Maxwell, who was a huge media mogul, and it was also an agent for Mossad and MI5, MI6, the satanic pedivore family. And Sir Robert Maxwell, oh sure, he unalived by falling off tragically off of his yacht. Yeah, I don't believe that. But whether it's Jeffrey, or even whether it's Sir Robert Maxwell, whether it's, Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein, whatever, they were never the bosses, but they did very hideous crimes against humanity, as well as, treason, but crimes against humanity of the most dastardly ones you can't even imagine. So anyway, let me get back to what Anya Wick's saying. Since court testimony can be used as evidence to potentially open up a criminal case, but when I got to the hearing, I was only allowed to say my name and address, and the judge refused to let me speak beyond that. When we had gone to the FBI a couple of years ago, they interviewed my father and said, oh, he said nothing happened, so we're going to close this case. If every successful politician is born into this world, they have vested interest in keeping it quiet. The cult of Baal, once again, I'll spell it B-A''A''L. And I wanted to say also, listener, that's also known as Moloch. These are satanic deities to the Satanists. Moloch, M-O-L-O-C-H, Baal, B-A''A''L. I talk about it a lot on my YouTube channel called The Controllers. I have the Controller series. Sometimes I talk about it on my Real series, but you should listen to my Controller series if you want to hear the full story. It is about, seed of the serpent, children of Cain, that first showed up a very long time ago in ancient Phoenicia, in the ancient Phoenician city-states. And then from there, infiltrated after a period of time into ancient Sumer, then ancient Babylon. And then from there, infiltrated and corrupted into ancient Egypt, and then went on to ancient Rome, and then spread out to the rest of Europe and to, Asia, Central Asia, Africa, Latin America, South America, everywhere. But this is where it started. And when I say seed of the serpent, I mean, as people quote and they read in the Bible when it said that the, oh gosh, now I'm forgetting what the word is. What it said, what the serpent did with Eve. But it's a, I can't believe I can't remember it. But what the word really means was that the serpent had sexual relations with Eve and impregnated her. And you know, the twins, Cain and Abel, Abel, the son of Adam, and Cain, the biological son of the serpent and Eve. And there's a longer story behind that I really believe is true. There wasn't just one Eve. There were, I heard, at least 4 of them. And this goes back to Anunnaki and creating clones and different things from very old technology from a long time ago. And it's not as far-fetched as you might think. There are different types of clones, but cloning from cells in the lab and creating that is not that difficult. Anyway, so that's where children of Cain, seed of the serpent, literal progeny of the dark one, you could say. And there is a Satan, there is a Lucifer. They are different. They're different splinters of like this, the same dark source family tree, but they do have their own kind of lineage routes, and there is a difference between them. In my experience, I don't know all of them, but my experience, Luciferians are mostly very much married to their intellect. That's how they are seduced and tricked, and they are married to that, and they believe that they are illuminated and they are the high, truly brilliant, amazing, chosen ones. But satanics are generally, not all of them, but the Satanist line is the one that gets into a lot more of the, when they call it passing their children through the fire, the burnt offerings to Baal and Moloch, literally means taking your own infant and other people's infants, and you toss them right into the fire. You'll see this huge statues of Moloch. It looks like kind of a bull head, often made of bronze, or these huge things holding, it looks like a big kind of a wok, or like a shallow bowl on its lap, and underneath that is like a big oven. Well, I can say it calmly because I've already cried buckets over the years over all this information, but that's still going on to this day. It was never stopped, and Anya Wick addresses that. That's what they call burnt offerings, or passing their children through the fire. All right, back to what Anya's saying. So Anya's saying, the cult of Baal, my family masqueraded themselves as Jewish publicly, but behind closed doors, at Passover dinners, I was drugged, and they would admit we are Satanists. Sean Atwood says, so I am here with Anya Wick, Epstein's niece, and I've been watching Anya on TikTok. So please support Anya's work. You can go, she's Anya Wick on TikTok. You can follow her there. I'm saying to you, listener. He says, I'm amazed by your story, harrowing, a lot of it with components in there, for example, like Bohemian Grove and other extreme things that I'm sure will fascinate the viewers. And I want to say to you, listener, if you don't know what Bohemian Grove is, it's it's closed down now, but President Trump's white hats when he first started cleaning up this mess in 2017 closed that down. But that was a place in Northern California where they have a huge, huge, huge statue of Moloch, which looks like a big owl. And they do their burnt offerings and their sacrifices and all of that there. So the presidents, vice presidents, prime ministers, very large CEOs of big companies, and very A-list celebrities and musicians, authors, etc., large military people would meet there every summer for a couple of weeks, and they have very crazy goings on there that you can't even imagine how debauched and satanic and hideous it is. And one of the things which I'll talk about in a little bit is also they have the hunting parties. I've heard way too many people testify about it. One especially Jesse Zaboter, which I will mention more in a little bit. Also Ali Carter. There are many people you can look up and do your own research on this. But I stopped counting after 70,000 hours of research I have much more than that, on the who, what, when, where, and why of what's been allowed to run this world, this dark cult that they call themselves elites and all of their minions. So I'm not speaking about opinion. I'm not talking about just like stories. And I also have my own experiences in my life on both sides. That's giving me like a bird's eye view on a lot of things. Okay. So Bohemian Grove, she mentions that. And they also, like I said, they have the hunting parties where the littles that I'm going to call it from now on, instead of saying babies and children, and I do mean babies and small toddlers and small children, I'll just say the littles. I'll say maybe babies and the littles. But they often would dress them in animal costumes. And just like you would have, they tell them they're playing hide and seek, but they terrify them. And what they do when they catch them, and you can imagine what that's like for those littles. And they are hunted just like you would hunt any animal on horseback and with weapons and stuff. They torture the littles incredibly to get the first word I'll say is adreno, the first part of the word. Now add on this part to that word, chrome, put those together as one word, or chromochrome, the substances that they extract after tremendous torture that adrenalizes the blood. And they extract it while the little is alive. They have to be alive. You can't even imagine this. I'm saying it with a quiet voice, but it's things that you can't imagine. And they do that, and before they do that, they RAPE the littles, and then they do what they do to get the extraction, and then it depends on what their plans are and what they're doing and their ceremonies, whatever, they will do further ceremonies and rituals by they're pedovores. They're not just pedos. Look up what that means. Pedovore. That means that you're consuming the FLESH of the littles. They are pedovores, and then that's what will happen to many of the littles there. Okay, so back to this reading now. For example, Bohemian Grove and other extreme things that I'm sure will fascinate the viewers. Sean says, disclaimer, harrowing content warning to viewers. Anya said, so my name is Anya Wick, but at birth was Anya Beth Epstein. I was born in a house in Boulder, Colorado. And in 2015, I changed my name to Owen Theodore Epstein. In 2020, I changed it again to Anna Petrova. And when I'm just saying to you, listener, that when Anya changed her name into Owen Theodore Epstein, she transitioned to being a male for 5 years. She had the mastectomy and was on hormones, had a full beard and everything, and so she's now transitioned back, and she's actually a very feminine, beautiful looking woman. Just her voice was altered. It won't go back, but that's what that means. And then she said, in 2020, I changed it again to Anna Petrova. I had realized when I was surrounded by my entire life and thought I could hide from it, I married a man named Wick, kept that name, and decided to start going public with my story just a few months ago. I had chemically driven amnesia majority of my life. I am Jeff Epstein's niece, and I was raised as a sex slave. My father, and I'll tell you, listener, her father is Stephen Epstein, Jeffrey's brother, and it seems like her father, well, it's quite clear, she lays it out, was running Viacom, the huge media conglomerate Viacom, but was fronting and pretending that he was just a divorce lawyer. But really, he had his paralegal running his divorce attorney practice, and he was running Viacom. Oops, excuse me, that was loud. He was running Viacom. It's important to know. And all those connections with Hollywood and media and politicians and tech and everything else. So she said, my father had me separated from my mother and twin brother, who, listener, I'm telling you, is the actor called Shia LaBeouf. If you don't know who he is, you can look him up, but that's her. She has many siblings because she talks about it, but that's her twin brother, Shia. and administered a substance that was designed to sever my memory. Every time I was taken to an ORGY, or family vacation, or trip to the cabin in the mountains, I was given this drug upon which everything would come flooding back. But when it wore off, so would the majority of my memories of it. And I would try to go to school, perform with my bands, be a regular person, but it broke me subconsciously. I knew something was very wrong. I had internalized it on myself. And after an attempt in 2015, I got away from the slavery I was in by taking testosterone, transitioning to male. I left Colorado in 2017 and started piecing together back memories I had assumed were only nightmares in about 2020. That's the very short version of the story. And Sean, we could come at this from any angle, any point of time in my autobiography. I invite you to just ask what you're curious about. Sean, so let's slow it down then and just go back to the beginning again. How old were you when you first realized that things weren't as they should be? Anya, I had awareness of this in grade school. I remember my supposed 7th birthday. I was actually already 10 years old. Let me backtrack. My father and stepmother had a baby girl in 1991 who was raised by another family. And I want to interject here again, listener, to say this is a lot with the Khazaria Mafia, or the fake JEWSs that are really satanic and practice that, but pretend to be righteous Hebrews, but they're not. This is what is very common and has been from this Khazaria Mafia for a very long time. I talk about it, like I said, in my Controller series or my Real series, but to put it in a short way, the seed of the serpent, children of Cain, has many branches, but one of them, as they were coming through, like I said, Phoenicia and Sumer and Babylonia and ancient Egypt and ancient Rome and blah, 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 they were also in the part of Russia that today is called Ukraine. You can understand a little bit more maybe about what's been going on there. And they were very, very satanic and doing all their, offerings to Baal and Moloch, as well as always robbing and raping so many people, behaving very crazily, also especially attacking all the pilgrims that would be going on pilgrimage to the Holy Land. And they would be attacking them and stealing their identities. And then not even a long time, reclaiming their lands or their home, their property, whatever they had. And then people would, in a generation or whatever, they would forget who had owned that. And this is how the Khazaria Mafia was infiltrating and putting and stealing all this stuff and taking all this stuff. And they often put their own biological children into different families to raise, so you don't know who. Like, I give an example. So otherwise you'd be like, why is he a Rockefeller? Why is she a Rockefeller? Why is the postman a Rockefeller? Why is that a Rockefeller? Why is that a Rothschild? Why is the teacher a Rothschild? Why is the banker a Rothschild? Why is the manager a Rothschild? So you wouldn't know how surrounded you were by these different branches of the satanic ruling elites. And, they're not really elites, they're scum, but, so that you're not aware of that. And I'm going to come back to that in a little bit when I talk about Bill Clinton, or when she talks about Bill Clinton. But that's very common. They have, a lot of what we call bastard children, and they give them to other families to raise. So you don't know who it is, whether it's an A-list celebrity or a politician or a governor or a mayor or a CEO or a musician or a big author or something like that. You don't know who they are because they have a different last name and they don't acknowledge who they really are. All right. So, but they most definitely keep those connections. Anyway, my stepmother had a baby girl in 1991 who was raised by another family. In 1998, they assigned me her birth date on my birth certificate, which they waited 10 years to file, claiming my stepmother was my biological mother, and finally put me in school in the gifted program, telling me I was tall. I thought it was very strange that my mother was so callous with me. I knew it wasn't normal that I wouldn't let her touch me on the shoulder, and I felt worlds away from my peers. I remember in the first grade sitting there journaling, I don't feel 7. I feel much older. I feel at once like there's something I'm missing that the rest of my classmates all understand, and that I've lived a lot more than that. I remember being in the schoolyard talking with my few friends about what would it be like if you were TORTURED and didn't know it. They would be like, "What are you talking about?" I got in trouble with my friend's mother for drawing stick figure PORN at a slumber party. Of course, it shouldn't be the child's fault if they've had exposure to anything like that, but I took the blame instead of my parents. I always knew something was wrong, because in my regular life, my parents were upstanding citizens. My father was a divorce attorney, but as we said, we know that Stephen Epstein was really running Viacom. But anyway, I already said that. And my mother was on the PTA. I thought I was the problem. I had some memories I retained, but because of the nature of the substance I was on, made that reality so different than my regular life. I thought these were nightmares, that I was sick, and I didn't tell anybody. Sean, how do you think your family got involved in these things? Anya, it goes back for generations. I remember my father confessing that my oldest brother is 8 years younger than him. Pedophilia is cyclical, with men especially. When they stifle it, they repeat the patterns, which I don't see as an excuse. I'm not a pedo, but of course this happens with men. And power and pressure to conform is excellent as a tool for silencing people. And I want to interject, listener, of course it happens with women too. It's just not males that are pedos. Okay, let me go back to the reading. They told me that we belonged to the cult of Baal. They told me this with consistency while I was being abused. Now, what you can look up about the cult of Baal, this information that is publicly available, is that it is thousands of years old, that it is a Phoenician satanic fertility cult, and publicly it's supposed to have been eradicated. But to my knowledge and my experience, it is not. This is what people perceive the Illuminati to be. It is a group of elites that practices forced pedophilia and uses these crimes to control people. They happen to have a huge reach over politics and entertainment. My great-grandfather, according to my father, was Walt Disney. Before he moved to the United States, his name was Artur Bick, and she spells it A-R-T-U-R, last name B-I-C-K-E. And his twin sister, who he had children with, whom I am descended from, was called Minnie. That's where we get Mickey and Minnie Mouse. It's very cute, right? Except for when you consider the abuse that I suspect is still happening to the littles who go into the entertainment industry. The littles who are born into it. And then I'm sure you've got to know, listener, I'm saying this, all about how satanic Disney is, Disneyland, how Walt Disney for Disney World bought that Florida swampland just for a few dollars. The CIA was all involved in it. All the tunnels that are there for the child sex trafficking, the Disney 33 Club, which is, Freemasonic, and Skull and Bones, and the 33 Club, and, all the secret societies there, all the Disney movies, the animated movies. You can look into this for yourself if you don't know. It's just the plain truth. They're just packed with pornographic images and all kinds of things, and words that are pornographic, or just say sex, and in all of their movies, in all of them, they were all about indoctrinating the children. And if you want to get the really bad creeps, you should watch Pinocchio when it's talked about Pleasure Island and what happens to the boys there. Yeah, that they go there and they don't come back, and all the things that was said about that. It's very... The satanics always have to tell you what they're doing, and then they say, well, we told you so many times, but you didn't believe it. You thought it was a story, you thought it was a movie, you thought it was just lyrics in a song, you thought it was just a book. So we don't have negative karmas now for what we do to you, because we already told you, and you just didn't pay attention. That's their excuse. Of course, that doesn't fly, but that's what they believe. And it's part of their religion that they have to tell us what they do. All right. The Mickey Mouse Club, that they started in the 50s or the 40s. And, the stars that came out of that from, I guess, the 80s or something, or the 90s. People that we know that we think are still around, but really they're not, like Britney Spears or Christina Aguilera or Ryan Gosling or Justin Timberlake. All these Mickey Mouse Club beings, most of them are inverted, the satanic inversion. The biological males are chemically castrated, chemically. They keep their male undercarriage. And then they have boob jobs and different things. And they're called Baphomets. That's the form of the... another form of Satan that the satanics really worship. And you see that in the Church of Satan. It has like a big goat head. It's the goat head of Mendes with big horns, and it has female breasts, and then it has an erect male phallus, and it has two fingers pointing up, two fingers pointing down, meaning as above, so below. It's a very, I'm sure you know what that statue looks like. That's a Baphomet. But that's what the like all the Victoria's Secret models, most of the A-list that you think are these amazing women that keep getting called the most beautiful women in the world, like Cameron Diaz or Jennifer Aniston or Angelina Jolie, or on and on and on. They were born biologically male. All right, and it also happens on the flip side, where the biological females, they keep their undercarriage, but they have, double mastectomies and get on male hormones, and they all have a lot of surgeries. These are prime jewels and gems, and they have millions of dollars of plastic surgery, masculinization procedures, feminization procedures, as well as training, as well as a lot of them were in Hollywood and celebrityhood. I mean, they have the best costumers in the world, like all those costumers that are receiving all those Academy Awards and all those things like that. They have been dressing these beings, and they know how to use the costuming, as well as wearing apparatuses like prosthetics for buttocks, hips, or male undercarriage, or if it's a scene that's a male that's talking, and they put in one male that comes to mind, Julianne Moore. And you can see, go back, if you don't believe me, I know you're thinking, no, she's so beautiful. Yeah, it's a very good job. But if you go back to when he first started on soap operas, along with the male Marissa Tomei, look at them in those old, I don't know the names of them, As the World Turns, maybe you can pull it up, just look it up. You'll see there's just two guys. They're so masculine, except their voices are higher, but they haven't yet had all the feminization surgeries. And they're just so obvious, two young dudes. Oh, God. And, but then they have so much surgery and different things, as well as a lot of training on how to walk and different things like that. Anyway, let me change the subject. It's such a terrible subject. Okay, so anyway, Anya said, she's saying, I suspect it's still happening to children who go into, or littles who go into the entertainment industry, littles who are born into it. She also said, but I got this off of her TikTok, and I'd never heard this before, so I want to give you this. She said also, twins keep having twins with each other, and the male has dozens and dozens of kids, mostly with his half-sister from the male before him. Lovely, right? So she's talking about the generational satanic incest and breeding. And like I often say, if you think the elites, like they often say, oh, darling, with their magazines, like we're so into breeding like horse and hound. We're so into breeding animals into, thoroughbred horses, thoroughbred dogs, whatever. But what you don't know is they've been, for a very long time, very into breeding humans and with other things. Yeah, they're very much into that. So Anya says, my father was abused by his parents, and I was raised going to these ORGIES, where I would meet other children who were put on television. I was raised getting taken to Bohemian Grove, where I was, after ceremonial corpse burning, for a time, very satanic, and they had, these are my notes. I already told you about the hunting parties there and different things. Oh, yeah, and I also made notes, and I'm interrupting Anya here, but I want to interject this because not a lot of people talk about this or know about this, not enough, I think. the royals in Europe and in different parts of the world, they've for a very long time had their very famous hunting parties. And I'm telling you, yeah, insert human into that, what they were hunting, what I told you before. An example of when the White Hat Global, or I say Earth Realm Military Alliance, started kicking ass and cleaning out the DUMBs, the deep underground military bases, the tunnels, the cities underneath our feet, as well as all their lairs, and rescuing all the children, and doing battle with the creatures that were there in the tunnels, and so many things. And that really started taking effect in 2017 with President Trump as CIC, Commander-in-Chief. But you will see that, for example, I'm going to give two examples here. And I remember looking at this, and I'm like, no one's even talking about this. It was all in the media, but they were calling it something else. When a huge forest in the Black Forest in Bavaria had so many of the German police there. They were just swarming. And later, when I just did some research recently, I was trying to refresh my memory on it. Yeah, because I saw the film clips, but they had 200 police units there. And what they were doing, it wasn't just police, it was emergency vehicles and all things. It was the White Hats that were rescuing the children from underground there. They were blowing up the tunnel systems there and ruining it, and then having to flood it. But what the corrupted satanic mainstream media said, because, it had to go on the news, but they said that what they called it, even though it lasted for 6 days, and they said it was just one guy named Yves Rausch, who supposedly held up 4 policemen in Germany and stole their GUNS. Yeah. And then they said that they needed 6 days of a 200 police units with helicopters, with they had thermo detectors and dogs scoping out what they admitted were scoping out caves, tunnels, and underground bunkers for this one guy that supposedly, like I said, held up 4 German police officers and ran away with their GUNSs. They said that's what all this was for 6 days, this huge invasion of the Black Forest. It happened on the outskirts of Oppenau in Baden-Württemberg, in the Black Forest. And that was huge, but that's like a perfect example of how the mainstream media just lies and obfuscates and doesn't tell you, and you're just thinking, oh yeah, okay, I guess so. But just one lone guy, and they said, oh yeah, we found him, we found Eve, he was just sitting in front of a tree, and he had the GUNSs that he ripped off from the 4 German police officers. He had them, and he was just sitting there, and we just got him. Yeah, a likely tale. His mother spoke up a lot about it, about how disturbed he was and different things, but they just try to make it like he's the cause of that, but that's not what was happening there. And another thing that is very telling, the Rothschilds were the main, they were the banksters. They were the ones that were running, the Federal Reserve, which was a private satanic central bank. They put their private satanic central banks almost in every country on the earth realm. And once they do that, it's all over with. They control everything. And they, the wealth is ridiculous because they just print money out of air. But they've been wealthy for a very long time. This is Khazarian Mafia. And even when they were escaping out of, because they kept getting kicked out of, whether it was Sumer or Babylonia, and then in Egypt and Rome, they kept getting kicked out after periods of time because of all their very dark, everything they kept doing. But they had all their jewels, their royal jewels, all their gold, all their everything else they had, because they were satanic royalty. And so, they had the money, but they just print money out of thin air. That's what the Fed has done forever. So, I mean, not forever, just since, 1913 in America? Okay, so, on looking at, you can look at the New York Post and pull up an article they published on September 6th in 2023. And they were just saying, Rothschild family treasures to be sold in historic auction worth millions. And then they just say, this October, Christie's in New York will sell hundreds of curated pieces from the decadent banking dynasty's trove in a series of events entitled Rothschild Masterpieces. The series will include a lavish assortment of art, furniture, and homewares. This week of auctions will make history. Jonathan Rendell, a Christie's deputy chairman, told the Post, for the first time, one of the great collecting families of Europe is offering its important and intimate heirlooms at auction in the United States. The quality of the 600 plus objects in these sales is as extraordinary as the range. The array comes from the collection of Baron James de Rothschild, his wife Betty, and their sons Baron Alphonse and Baron Gustave, whose homes in Paris and the Château de Ferrières were as grandiose as to have a style called Goût Rothschild. Goût is a French word, G-O-U-T. It means taste, named after them. And you can see that they're Rothschild-owned huge estate in Austria. There was an article about it too in February 2018. I tell you, just when the white hat global military alignments under President Trump as CIC and the 70% of the American military that hadn't been turned satanic, because unfortunately previously 30% of the U.S. military was satanic. It was infiltrated. It's since been cleaned up for the most part. But in February 2018, you can look this up for yourself. It said Rothschild sold an Austrian hunting estate, almost the size of Manhattan, that the European banking family has owned for 200 years, called Langau. That's Langau, owned by Baron Albert von Rothschild. And it was a massive, dense property of wooded areas. Yeah, that's where they held so many of their hunts that I referenced. And, you know, they had to sell it, just like they had to start selling all their property because of one of President Trump's executive orders that he put in when he got into his first term, that anyone who is guilty of crimes against humanity and or treason has all of their properties confiscated, all of their monies confiscated, everything confiscated, everything. So that's why you saw this huge auction, and the Rothschilds selling things and giving up their estates and things like that. Okay, so like I said, these things are all documented, but people just didn't know what was really going on behind the scenes. I mean, I understand that. But then, as I mentioned, Jessie is a boater. Her first name is spelled Jesse. Her last name is spelled Czebotar. You can look her up. There's a lot of clips that she's done on social media, especially YouTube. She is a tremendous person. She's a chaplain now, but she has a very interesting background because she was raised, she's from the bloodline families, and she was raised since she was born that she would be what's called a mother of darkness. Now, she resisted that. You should hear her stories. Her information is amazing. She resisted that, and she actually said she was saved by Jesus when she was 3 years old, but she was still in those. Her family still kept trying to make her become a mother of darkness. And she talks about different things, how she would have to go to, like this castle, the Mother of Darkness castle in, which I'll talk about a little bit later, in Belgium. And like the hideous, like things we can't imagine, the ceremonies of the mothers of darkness would be lined up, and as she was supposed to take the place of her grandmother to become the mother of darkness, what they were required to do that is that the new mother of darkness would have to take a ceremonial sword and decapitate their own either mother or grandmother in that ceremony, and then take the place. That's how they took the place of the becoming the new mother of darkness. And this mother of darkness, these are the small group of the that would be very high on the hierarchical satanic pyramid, that would be advising and giving out messages and communications and direct communications from Satan himself, and his generals and his, lieutenants and corporals, whatever. They would be also very top of the pyramid there, orchestrating that, and you don't disobey them. I mean, they have a lot of power. They're given a lot of power until they're not, right? Until they get decapitated by their family member. Okay, So here's Jessie Zaboter, and Jessie Zaboter is such an amazing being. She gave a direct testimony, which is now unsealed. So yes, you can see this with your own eyes, official court testimony to President Trump. That was used to nail a lot of the satanic elites and their minions. She gave direct court testimony. And this is just a small little clip, a blurb I took of her. I'm inserting in here. She's saying, Jessie Zaboter, she's saying, so at the hunting parties, they would have all these expendable children outside in the woods. Usually they'd have whole grounds, like a tunnel system or something underground, where they would hold the kids in cages until the time of the hunt. And the hunt usually happens later, once it's dark outside. And so what they'll do, like they'll kind of make a parameter, which is pretty large, of these woods, and station the different elite people around the perimeter. And then when they get go, they just release the kids, and the kids are told to just run, to hide. That's when the elite will go through the woods and start hunting for them. When they catch them, a lot of times they will first sexually abuse them, and then they will unalive them. So not everybody will get unalived in that situation. If they don't, then they would get used for other hunts. But, for kids that I saw who were, really good survivors, and it would just continuously have to relive trauma, so there was kind of like those kids on the outside. And then because we were hierarchy kids, that means she was from the satanic bloodlines. And then because we were hierarchy kids, we were on the inside. And so inside, usually in the house or the lodge, you would have the older men who were too old. Sometimes it did include women, but they were too old to be out in the woods hunting for the kids. So they brought everything indoors for those individuals. And those individuals were not allowed to unalive the littles, but they were allowed to capture and RAPE the hierarchy children. So, once the signal was given that the hunt was on, you were just trying to escape, hide, and not be found. And sometimes they would make it seem like for the kids like it was a hide and seek game. So unless you got caught, you really didn't know what happened. That was just a short little clip from her. I think I'm going to, it's already at 52 minutes, so I'm going to do this in some sections. I will just call this part 1. And I know if you guys are faithful listeners, just bear with me. All the things I've got like part 2s coming up on other things. I have different series going on, and I will fulfill those. I won't leave you guys hanging. But I'm going to end this here now. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. That really helps me out. Thank you so much. I end all of my clips with a closing prayer, and what I'm saying is, God bless all beings in all worlds. Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Yes, peace, peace, peace. That's what we're all looking forward to. Yes, beautiful peace on the inside and reflecting on the outside. God bless you and yours. I'm sending much love and big hugs to you and yours. I'll see you when I see you, with a part 2 coming up, as well as a part 2 from another series coming up that I've been doing. So look forward to that. Why not hit the notification bell so you don't miss out? I'll see you when I see you, and bye-bye for now.